Welcome to today's Software AG webcast titled Saving Mainframe Costs with zIIP. Today's webcast will be presented by Don Ellis, Solutions Architect, Natural Application Development Division at Minnesota IT Services, and Patrick Gould, Chief IT Architect at Software AG. As we move through today's presentation, I invite you to submit any questions that you may have via the Q&A box, which is located in the lower right corner of your WebEx session. We will address your questions at the end of today's program. In the event that we're not able to answer your question, your submission will be recorded, and today's presenters will be back in touch with you as soon as possible. Additionally, today's presentation is being recorded. This recording will be available to you via YouTube should you wish to access it later on. To receive a copy of the YouTube link, please send an email to the webcast host. Before I turn today's presentation over to Patrick, I'd like to briefly introduce you to Software AG. Software AG offers the first end-to-end digital business platform based on open standards with integration, process management, adaptive application development, real-time analytics, and IT portfolio management as core building blocks to help customers build their digital futures today. With over 45 years of customer-centric innovation, Software AG is ranked as a leader in many innovative and digital technology categories. Software AG has more than 4,300 employees and is active in 70 countries. It is now my pleasure to welcome Patrick Gould.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have you join us for the How Minnesota Human Services Reduce Their Mainframe Costs webinar. Don Ellis and myself, Patrick Gould, are the presenters today, and Don will kick it off. Don is a solutions architect, as Will said, at the state, and has been involved with their natural zIIP-enabled implementation for many years now. So they're one of our oldest customers, I think, for the whole zIIP enablement. So let's get started, Don.
Thank you, Patrick. Great to be here today. My name is Don Ellis. I work for the state of Minnesota in their Department of Human Services. And while I have not been with the state for very many years, I have seen natural since 1982. So I've been around a bit, different companies, and a lot of experience in this. Kick it off here. There we go. Brief overview, go through a little bit of what zIIP is and how we use it, some statistics and how much we're saving, and Patrick will pick up on some of the next steps for where zIIP is going and how to get your own copy. Okay, a little bit about the state. I first saw zIIP in 2014. I think they had it a little bit before that, and we have two applications here, and the first one got onto zIIP before I started here, and I helped with the second one get enabled with zIIP. But at the time, back in 2014, when we did this, we had an IBM Z10, 277 MSUs, 4 general purpose processors, and 1 zIIP processor. There are 2 natural database-based applications on that mainframe. They reside on separate LPARs. One is called Maxis, and I will use that term throughout this, and it's the public systems, the cash, food stamps, and all that. And the other one is PRISM, which is the child support and enforcement. And Maxis went on zIIP maybe 8 months before PRISM did. We do have chargeback from a central IT organization. The charges are Department of Human Services for all CPU, storage, and everything. So, okay. Our configuration is a little bit different today. Right now we have a Z13 processor, which we put in place last year, 453 MSUs, 2 general purpose processors, and 1 zIIP. Same applications, but we had a sysplex with 3 mainframes, and one of the things they went to was 2 mainframes, so we've gotten some other applications on this one processor. This is our product configuration in 2.14. We were at Natural 8.2.3, which is the version you have to be on to have zIIP at all. I'll just highlight that. We have upgraded a few of the products. What we've been doing lately is trying to get the two applications together on the same version of the products, and we have pretty much done that now. We have some upgrading to do if you look at this, but we've got plenty of work for a while here. Okay, why did Minnesota look at zIIP? In a little bit before 2014, they were reaching CPU capacity, applications batch run a long time, and online was slowing down, and they were looking at having to purchase a new mainframe, and they did have a zIIP processor on the mainframe already not being utilized, so they figured they could slow down the upgrade cycle. Okay, so a few statistics on how much business we put through here. This is in the Maxis application. We run about 16 billion commands through ADABASE a month, and about 3 million transactions a day through CICS. And the PRISM application, we do about 4 billion ADABASE commands a month and 35 million monthly transactions, a little over 1 million a day. Now, to note that we did upgrade to a new mainframe, but we were able to delay for a little over 2 years the purchase of a new mainframe. We really just purchased the new mainframe because the old one was off of warranty, and you can get a new mainframe with warranty for a better price than we were paying by just going to service only. And we got the new technology. But we did cap the MSUs for the two natural LPARs at the old rate, so we didn't have to pay more software costs to the other vendors for going to a new mainframe with a higher MSU value. Okay. I noticed this slide doesn't have any implementation information here. We're going to go through that, and then zIIP processing parameters and cost savings. But I do notice that I don't have anything about the implementation on these slides. It was an easy product to install. You just have to get a license for it and link the license file into your natural nucleus, your batch nucleus, and run an authorized services manager address space, and then just enable zIIP. It is an easy product to install. We could talk just a little bit about zIIP if anybody doesn't know what the zIIP processor is about. It's a specialty processor that IBM introduced a while ago to have a dedicated workload processed by that processor without impacting your total MSU costs, and then having to pay more for software and everything. I believe it was brought to alleviate the resource limitations with DB2, and I remember running a different company a long time ago when we had DB2, which would take pretty much all the resources. If you wanted to upgrade your mainframe to support DB2, you'd have to pay Software AG more for ADABASE, CA more for everything else. So this zIIP concept allows you to run extra resources without having to pay the other vendors for software, because it doesn't increase your MSU value. So there's some parameters you can use to tune it. We turned it on for everything batch. Don't see any reason. We haven't had any issues with that at all. It's worked fine. You can get some good statistics out of that, and these are just parameters you have the option to tune. To get the parameters out of a batch job, it's as simple as putting this at the end of after your program, and you can get the statistics. So when Maxis went live, the preview you see here, we just did some trial on this with a background job that runs all the time. And what you're looking for is that total enclave zip CPU time percentage to be high. So when we initially implemented zip into production in early 2014, you notice we had 52% of the eligible workload workload in natural was zip enabled. It wasn't quite as high as we thought, but there turned out to be a little bit of an issue with FastPath that we had that we corrected, and then we ended up getting up to 96%, which is a good number later on in 2014. And then currently we still are running at that 96% utilization. These are some of the statistics you get out of the zip enabler if you display them. And this is out of a batch job that runs pretty much all the time. And if you notice, it tells you how many times you had to go out of zip mode back to TCB mode, which is that you couldn't do things that were zipped. And if you notice the first one there, it was database calls. In this particular one, 805,000 database calls. It had to switch back to TCB mode, and that was the first issue we had there, and it had to do with a FastPath issue. So we ended up doing an upgrade to FastPath, and if you notice on the right, the database calls went down to 2, and then the things that are not zipped are things that you would expect to not be zipped, like calls to external modules. You can't zip calls to COBOL or assembler modules, setting CPU times, and things like I/O and get mains. It has to do that on the general purpose processor. So you're going to get some swap backs anyway, but this turned out to be some good numbers here for us. And Prism, the same thing. These statistics tell you a few things. That we had 4 general purpose processors, 1 zip. That zip normalization factor is like a percentage of how fast that is compared to a regular processor. So the zip processors are faster than general processors. And let's see. You notice here when we implemented it in Prism 2, we got the same thing. The number 1 reason for swapping back to TCB mode was database calls, but we had the same issue on that application with FastPath, and it's been corrected now. If you notice, our big reasons we don't get zip enabled now is because of sequential I/O, get mains, calls to external modules. So both these applications are looking very good with their zip utilization. And we can talk about some costs and how much we saved with Maxis. And tried to get some time frames here that had the same utilization of CPU overall. So in November 2013, we had all of those 1,000K CPU service units. So this is how we get billed. Our billing statement tells how many service units they are billing us for and the overall cost. And our monthly charge for just batch for the Maxis application was $230,000 in November when we had zip installed in a trial mode there, so you see a little bit of zip utilization, but they're charging us a lot less for the zip. And so in November 2014, the amount of CPU used was about the same, but our costs were down to $110,000. So we actually did save in building $119,000 a month in chargeback. I know, funny money, but it did keep us from having to upgrade a mainframe. So, actually the business does get a bill for that, so it comes out of their budget. So that's that much less that they have to spend on other things. And then looking at a little bit later, November in 2016, you can see we're still saving a fair amount. We have had some there's lower CPU there in that time, but we have had some initiatives to reduce CPU in the last year or so. But bottom line is we are able to get 64 to 68% of the batch CPU running on zIIP. Now, I just get a billing number for total batch CPU. It doesn't say this was all natural work. A lot of it's sorts, FTPs. It's just batch in general, and of course those don't apply. But we're actually satisfied with what we can save there. Some other amount for the Prism application. You notice we went from about 101,000 in July of 2014, and we actually implemented it in production in August of 2014. So if I look at the first full month that zIIP was enabled, which would have been September, and again, a similar, actually just a slightly higher CPU utilization, but we went down to 68,000, saving 32,000 a month. And if I look at the next year, May 2017, we're still able to save some money here. And the Prism batch, about 51 to 54% of the batch CPU runs on the zIIP. Same issues. We've got sorts, we've got FTPs, we've got a few other things that don't use zIIP that run in there. So, just to summarize, it was really easy to install. You've got good utilization statistics, and it's helped us lower costs and postpone a mainframe upgrade. We did do the mainframe upgrade anyway, just to get to the newer technology to reduce the footprint, and we went to a service as an infrastructure as a service type of model anyway, instead of buying our own mainframe. But we do have the natural applications work capped. And that's really the end of my presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick and hang around for questions after the fact. Patrick?
Yeah, thanks, Don. That was great. Yeah, I worked with the state of Minnesota during the trial for zIIP. So I have a long history with them. We were right there when it was still under Natural 427. We got it up and running. So they were one of the early adopters of natural zIIP. So what I'd like to do now is just go over some zIIP information, something that's on the roadmap, some things that have already been released, and just show you how far we've come with zIIP, and in the end, how far we're actually going to go with zIIP. I mean, zIIP is part of our 2050, Database Natural 2050 story, and we are going to keep on enabling every product we can with zIIP. So let me move on to the next slide. So let's take a small step back. As you can see or understand what the purpose of zIIP is, it's the ability to move CPU off of your general processor and let it run on a zIIP processor. So all the new machines have zIIP processors on them already. You just have to pay IBM a small fee, and they will kick off some macro code, and you will have a zIIP engine. And once you have that zIIP engine, we now have Natural enabled for zIIP. We used to only have the Natural batch enabled for zIIP, but now we do online too. So we have Natural CICS, Natural Complete, and Natural Batch. So now we can cover the whole spectrum of a day, and if Natural online is generally in your peak area, your 4-hour rolling average, and your natural batch at night maybe doesn't quite reach that peak, we can now flatten the whole curve. So we can bring down your CPU usage a lot more than we could before. So any of those customers who did early analysis with us, I think it's time for you to look at Natural zIIP again, because it is a thorough product now, and it is now called the Natural Enabler for zIIP. And as I say, it does all three. And that again, of course, will, as you can see, would reduce total CPU, and we do still have customers who are billed by total CPU for the month. And then we have those that are billed for that peak, that rolling 4-hour average peak. Also coming to some customers that always run at peak, but they run at peak because there is a product they have that time and grabs all the free CPU that is available. So zIIP there too is an advantage, because when we reduce some of the other processes to run on zIIP, this task that needs all of the CPU will get more CPU and can therefore run in a faster time. So zIIP can be tricky, but it always reduces CPU, and I don't know of any CFO who is not interested in reducing CPU costs. Little technical, not very technical that much, but on the left-hand side, you will see we have natural, and we're taking batch as an example, natural CICS and natural complete, not just natural complete, would act in exactly the same way. So if you don't have a zIIP processor, everything runs on the TCB process, the TCB, the task control block. Once you have a zIIP enabler enabled, and you're allowed to have as many zIIPs as you do general processors. So if you have 3 general processors, you're allowed to enable up to 3 zIIP processors. So once you have the zIIP installed, the license key is already, when Natural kicks off through the Authorized Service Manager, it'll start in SRB mode, which is the mode the zIIP engine runs, and then it will procedurally go through your code, and then every time it needs to do an IO, etc., a write work file, it will switch over to TCB mode and run on the general processor. So sequentially, as the program goes through these two, you can see that all the eligible zIIP code runs on the SRB, and all the non-eligible code runs on the general processor. Okay, available now. As I say, available now, and a little bit more coming in October. So for customers with significant scope of natural work on z/OS, this is a z/OS product, and its main aim is to reduce peak loads and GPP CPU consumption. Most third-party vendors, IBM themselves, bill you by a rolling 4-hour average. And then even if the people that you're paying to, like let's say it's an agency, so we've seen some state agencies where the IT group is billed by the 4-hour average, but they bill out to their agencies for monthly costs. So either way you look at it, it's going to save costs. And just to take a little bit step back, just remember this is a product very similar to Natural Optimizer Compiler and Database FastPath that were designed to reduce CPU. And we have lots and lots of customers of those. So anybody who has those products, zIIP is going to help you. So anything, therefore, when we can do batch, we can do anything like RPC servers, ACI servers that run in batch mode. If that ACI server runs under CICS now, that is zIIP enabled, and then complete. So we've seen customers that have offloaded up to 98% of natural batch and up to 80% of the natural online workload. So that's the little graph on the left-hand side over here. So right now we have all of these products ready. The only one that was a little bit behind was the complete, but it will be updated next month. It wasn't enabled for the complete database interface, but that is there now. And by that I mean be able to use FastPath and all of that. So CICS is already enabled just like natural batch, so you can get the maximum offload with natural online and natural batch. One of the precursors for getting natural CICS to work was we suggested that you be on the latest version of natural, but we have taken a step back because we know lots of our customers aren't there yet, and we would like you to try and take advantage of the zIIP offload. So we can install the CICS and batch right down to an 823 level if that is a requirement for you that will allow you to get zIIP to work today. So as long as you're at those two levels of natural for batch and CICS, we're good to go with the product. So moving forward, customers. So when I say customers, these probably are examples of people that are running zIIP today or are very close to running zIIP or are working with us right now to determine their ROI. So when we look at this, always, any customer that has significant natural load, and when we say significant natural load, we mean that compared to the total load on the machine. So even if you have a small machine, but your natural is 80% of the load, you're just a pure ADA-based natural shop running on an LPAR or on a machine, and most of your load is natural, you're going to be a good candidate for zIIP. Natural workload is increasing year to year. So if you want to be able to control your natural workload, and we know there's lots of events that could suddenly trigger you to suddenly have more workload. We have all these disruptive technologies coming in, and sometimes those will affect you to suddenly have more workload. So you need to be ready for that workload when it comes. This one, as you heard from Minnesota, they were able to defer an upgrade. So that has an ROI value to somebody in the organization. So it filters in at some level. CFOs love zIIP. You might be able to defer a new mainframe. So you might be able to hang on to that mainframe for 1 more, 2 more years, and that is going to save you money. You may have the option to purchase a smaller mainframe. So when we're talking smaller mainframes, we generally mean a smaller check. So again, there is a way to get ROI out of this product. Are charged by IBM and others by the CPU seconds. So if you can reduce CPU seconds and you charge by CPU seconds every month, there you go. Even if you're capped, sometimes because we're capped, we can reduce the amount you use, so you never have to worry about reaching that cap and slowing down your processing. So you'll be able to process faster. Charged by IBM and others for the rolling 4-hour average, we see that one the most, and it's pretty much how all the other ISVs charge you. So any reduction in that should be money in your back pocket. You prepay IBM for CPU usage because you're scared that the penalties are so high when you do get billed. So this gives you a little bit of insurance policy because you can control the amount of CPU, and you're reducing that CPU so you can stay below that, that peak, scary peak that might happen in the middle of the night sometime. Outsourcers also benefit from CPU. So even if you're outsourced, as long as you put in your contract that you're able to reduce your CPU, you want a bill reduction, you should be able to get a benefit there too. Okay, so for us to understand if you are a good candidate and for you to understand if you're a good candidate, we have some things that we can look at to help assess the environment. So a lot of you customers own a piece of software called MXG, which does analysis of SMF data. Now, Barry Merrill has written a query for us that allows us to check the number of CPU seconds natural batch users, natural complete users, and natural CICS users in a time frame. We like a month and a representative month because that gives us a good indication of the amount of CPU those products are using. We also grabbed the database CPU because I heard there's a rumor out there somewhere that database is going to be zIIP enabled soon. And we already have those stats now. So we'll be able to help you ascertain, once that product becomes available, how much potential CPU you'll be able to save with database. So as I said, we're going right down the product line to add zIIP enablement. So this report itself will report on total CPU, and it will also report on the rolling 4-hour average CPU for the top 20 hours. So then you can see if I reduce my CPU by this second in the highest hour, what is my next peak? We can do online and batch separately. They're in separate columns, but they can all be in the same zIIP SMF data. What we do is present findings, and we try to work with you to assess the ROI of a natural CPU reduction. Another way to do it is to just do a trial, even if you don't have a zIIP. If you install natural zIIP, it will tell you how much it's saving after a job or after a CICS session. And even if you don't have a zIIP engine, it's going to tell you how much it could have offloaded to that zIIP processor. So that's getting right down to the nitty-gritty and gives you a true, accurate number of your potential savings. So once we've executed the POC, we can analyze the results, and together with you guys, we can determine where the break-even ROI point is. And then we show you a final report showing the cost savings. We can also look at SCRT reports if needed. They give us some information on how much CPU is being consumed, where your caps are being touched, and information like that. And then every time we do a health check, and we do many of them, I don't think there's many customers out there that we haven't done a health check for. So if you want one, let us know. They're free. We normally make the zIIP analysis part of that health check to give you and us an indication to see how much natural you are using. So this is just an example of a zIIP analysis report done by the Barry Merrill software. Again, if you own MXG, Barry will send you the query. You can run it, and you can either analyze it yourself or you can share it with us, and I can analyze and highlight all the different numbers that we're looking for. But in this particular example here, on line 751, those are the totals. So yeah, we'll get total CPU time. Next to it, we'll get the SAG CPU time, and then we break it into natural and database. This is an older report. It does not include the CICS portion yet, but as I say, that is in the report already. And then we can just do some calculations and figure out the percentage of natural compared to total. And the bottom of this report, we have the rolling 4-hour averages. And in that, we'll see what part natural is consuming. So we can get a pretty good idea if we can reduce the natural by the percentages we're saying, what your CPU reduction could be. Very handy report. Another handy part of the report is I can also get total jobs, all the jobs that run in the month and the CPU they're consuming. I can sort that, and we can see which jobs are consuming the most CPU. So we often help people reduce a little CPU just by them not realizing that a particular job was consuming so much CPU. But yeah, just an example, even though I didn't do the CICS analysis over here, I know the CICS job, so I could see how much CPU seconds it consumed in the month, and then I can do my 80% reduction calculation in there just as an idea. So these reports are very, very handy. This is what you get from the stat report when you do a trial or you already have the product implemented. I think Don showed you his. This is just an example, and on the right-hand side, it just tells you what the different columns are. But basically, this is what we're trying to get to is the total enclave CPU time. This is just a silly little example. So looks like it was probably reading the employee's file and doing something silly like writing a work file in there. That's you can either do at the end of a job, or if you just put it in the job card, it'll do it for the whole job. So in closing, what we've seen and we've proved, and it's all over the world, it's not just here in the US, that natural zip enabler has proven its value, and it can definitely help you reduce mainframe CPU. That's the aim of the product. And as we go towards our 2050 goal, our aim is to try and reduce your CPU as much as possible, as much as you need. And as I say, we've had many successful world implementations. We're getting a couple of new customers every month. We already do have one that is utilizing CICS, and they are seeing good results. And that particular customer even has a little bit of DB2, and they're seeing some CPU reduction there. It's always a code between them. If we reduce the CPU, we sometimes increase the clock times on the DB2 side, but sometimes it doesn't matter. So the fact that they're reducing CPU is still beneficial to certain people. I think you can get access to this presentation, but if you click on this particular link here near the bottom of the page, that will take you to an article that Will Heinen, who is now retired from Software AG, and was probably the father of Natural Zip. He put a lot of time and effort into product marketing, working with our amazing R&D team on the Natural Zip enabler side. And that gives you a good article on how to save mainframe costs at a higher level than we did today. So that is all I have to present today. I thank you for listening. I hope it was beneficial. And we are now going to take any questions. Any questions I cannot answer, I will certainly take down, and we will get back to you with answers for those ASAP. Okay, Will?
Okay, yep, great. Thank you to both of you. We have several questions, so I'm suspecting we could take up a good amount of time. So the first one will be, what percentage of your 2 applications are written in natural or other languages?
Okay, that one's for me. The intent was that they would all be, both of those 2 applications would be entirely written in natural. Of course, they were written in the early 90s, so the only thing that's not natural, there are some sub-programs called that are COBOL and assembler to do things. We've been trying to engineer those out of the applications, and we're kind of working at that. It's probably still, 90% of the code that's run has got to be natural, outside of other things like sorts and FTPs. So when I say that 51 to 54% is batch CPU running on zip, and the 60 number for the other application, there's a lot of, we do some things to send data to the data warehouse, which isn't natural either. So, yeah, so it probably ends up being more like 70% that's natural overall if you take all the warehouse stuff out. I'm kind of really guessing at that one. But the intent was that these applications are mainly natural. That answer that?
Okay. The next question. We, the state of New Jersey, do not use FastPath nor Siceplex in our database natural production environment. Do you think that we would still see the same level of processing improvements with zip?
I can take that one. Yeah, because the bottom line is every command that is not IO-based will run on the zip processor. You're definitely going to see a reduction. Not all our customers who own zip have database FastPath. Sometimes FastPath is dependent on the sequence you access data. So, I mean, we can always do an AFP look. I'm not too sure if we've done one with the state of New Jersey yet, but maybe a combination of them would be even better. But yeah, they're not dependent on each other.
Okay, the next one we have, some savings were due to Z13 install. Do you know how much due to Z13 versus zip?
So that's an interesting question. I can take that one, Patrick, unless you've got a real good answer. We noticed that. We noticed our CPU utilization go down, and I haven't got a good reason because in my mind, if we're billed by in units of 1K CPU service unit per month, that should be the same. It's how, that shouldn't change, but it did, and maybe in the 20% range. What we really noticed with the Z13 was the runtime for batch went down quite a bit for batch jobs. And I don't know why but we have seen a little bit of a reduction in CPU utilization for the Z13, and I haven't found anybody that could explain that to me. Maybe you know, Patrick?
No, I don't. Maybe I'll find out, though. Just one question I can ask.
Okay, the next one we have, can you please give examples of eligible and non-eligible code for zIIP processor?
Anything I/O bound.
Is that it? Are you still there, Patrick?
I think Patrick has left the building.
Okay. Let me.
I can answer that one. I/O operation.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
When you're doing I/O, that's not zIIP enabled. Things like waits or get mains, free mains cannot be zIIP enabled, and the calls to non-natural programs, which is pretty much our biggest thing that doesn't get zIIP enabled because natural doesn't know what you're going to do in a called COBOL or assembler program, so they have to send you back to the general processor in case you do something like call an SVC or something.
Okay, I have another one, Don, I think specifically for you, and it was fairly simple. How did you calculate your savings?
Okay. Well, we, like I say, we get billed per amount of 1,000 K CPU service units at this certain price, and just took billings beforehand, added the two, the batch CPU and the zIIP CPU together, multiplied times the price. We get the zIIP charge that we have is quite a bit less per 1,000 K CPU service unit. And I just took those, multiplied them together, and took a total before and after. And if I look at months that have about the same CPU utilization total with with the zIIP and the non-zIIP added together, I can get that. When I got to different years, our rates changed a little bit, so I did to make it easier to compare. I used the same rates and just took the utilization. And we are, if you look in May of 2017, we're paying a little less for batch CPU and zIIP CPU than I'm showing here, but I had to use the same numbers to come up with that.
Okay. Patrick, are you back on the line?
I'm back, yeah. Verizon decided to kick me off.
All right, good. Then welcome back. Let me then move to the next question. What will be the ETA for zIIP for database, and will it be at an additional cost to the price for the natural zIIP?
I am not a pricey person. I'm not a salesperson, but I would presume there's going to be a cost associated with it, and I believe the earliest releases will be in April of next year, and it'll probably be under ECR at that stage, early customer release. But yeah, I have no idea. I can't say. It's going to be ROI. That's all I know.
Okay. The next thing I have, we already own Natural Optimizer Compiler and Database FastPath. Will we still see a good percentage of CPU switched to the zip engine?
Don was going to answer that one.
Yeah, I'll answer that one. If you caught our product sheet on the front, we have zip, or we have Natural Optimizing Compiler, and we have FastPath, and so the savings you see in reductions in the slides earlier reflect already having those products. And they've had FastPath and Optimizer here for a long time, so I don't know how much they saved by adding those two products. I wasn't here. They've had those for a long time here, so I don't know what it looked like before that.
Natural Optimizer Compiler generally in customers that have it probably see an 18 to 25% reduction in natural CPU. So, and then with zip, we're seeing anywhere between 70 and 90. So that gives you an indication of the difference. So when you have both, it's very beneficial to you.
Next one, can we do a proof of concept or trial without owning a zip processor?
Yes, you can. And it's probably one of the quickest ways to get results. What we do need is a good test bed, though, because if we install the product, we want to make sure it's doing things similar to the way they run in production, and we want to be able to run a process without zip, and then the same process with zip, whether it's online or batch, and then we can compare the results right there. So a lot of customers do have semi-production environments where they do their testing, and that is a good place to do it. We've actually had customers who are brave enough to stick it straight into production and measure it right there. It's not a high risk in the end because we're not compiling anything, we're just putting in the fact that certain statements run on different processes.
The next one I have, can I control priority-wise what runs on the zip processor?
No, you cannot. Zips are designed to grab whatever's needed at that point in time. So let's say we had DB2 and Natural competing against the same zip engine. It's on a first-come, first-served basis. So you can't say I want N amount to do this, N amount to do that. So, but generally what happens there is you figure out what your zip load is, and if you are filling up your zip processor too much, then it's probably time to get another zip processor enabled. You're allowed up to as many as general processors you have, as I said earlier. So generally, you're not going to fill up your one zip if you have one processor, but if you have 4 general processors and you only have one zip, depending on your workload, your workday, the way you schedule, you might bump into each other every now and then.
How much does a Natural Zip Enabler cost?
That's the $100,000 million question. So zip is based on, we do have a book price, but because we have to have, but generally zip is priced in a work together with the salesperson after a test, an ROI, a POC, that we can find a common good savings, and then we base the price on the utilization somehow in the background. That's a negotiation between the salespeople and the CFO of the customer and the people that are going to see the benefit, as we only want to sell it if there's an ROI. And then it all depends on certain customers how much ROI they want to see. Do they want to see it in a year? Do they want to see it in 2 years? Do they want to see it next week? That's where the negotiations come in. And then again, it also has the ROI of saving you money on ISV's other products. So we've never actually seen two the same. So it's a fun thing to do, but it's a good exercise to go through.
Okay. The last question I will pose to you is the following. I heard a rumor about database zIIP. Is this true, and when?
Yeah, that one actually came up already. So yeah, it is true. So stay tuned. We'll get Becky to do some talking. She might do a little bit of it at the, we're having a tech ed in Austin next week, Wednesday. So if you're bored and you feel like coming down to sunny Austin, we already have 50 people registered. Come along, free food, free breakfast, and you might a little bit hear the first inklings of what database zIIP is. But no, I'm sure over the months to come, we will be bringing that story out.
Okay. I'd like to thank all of our attendees on the webcast today. This program will be posted to the Database and Natural playlist on Software AG's YouTube channel later today. As mentioned at the beginning of the program, if you'd like to receive the YouTube link directly, please just send a quick email to the webcast host. Don and Patrick, thank you very much to both of you for your time and your presentations this morning. Our program has now ended. Enjoy the rest of your days.